Before a relationship officially ends, it rarely collapses in one loud, dramatic moment. More often, it fades quietly. The shift begins in small, almost invisible ways that are easy to overlook if you are not paying close attention. There are no clear warnings, no obvious arguments, no sudden declarations. Instead, something subtle changes in the emotional atmosphere, and if you listen closely, you can feel it long before it is ever spoken out loud. At first, it may just feel like a slight distance. Conversations that once felt effortless now seem a bit forced. There is still communication, but it lacks depth. The warmth that used to exist naturally now feels like it requires effort. You might notice that she no longer shares the small details of her day, the random thoughts, or the feelings that once came so easily. It is not that she has nothing to say, it is that she is no longer choosing to say it to you. This shift can be confusing because nothing appears obviously wrong on the surface. There is no clear conflict to point to, no single moment that explains the change. But internally, something important is happening. Emotional connection, which is the foundation of any strong relationship, begins to weaken. And when that emotional bond starts to fade, everything else slowly follows. From a psychological perspective, emotional withdrawal often happens gradually. When someone feels deeply connected, they naturally seek closeness, understanding, and shared experiences. But when that connection starts to diminish, the brain begins to protect itself by creating distance. This is not always a conscious decision. Sometimes it is an internal process that unfolds quietly over time. You may notice that she no longer turns to you for comfort or advice. Problems she once shared with you are now handled on her own or discussed with others. This does not necessarily mean she has become more independent in a healthy way. Instead, it can signal that the emotional reliance she once had on you is fading. The sense of safety and closeness that once defined your connection is no longer as strong as it used to be. This stage is often the most difficult to recognize because it does not come with clear signs. It is felt more than seen. You might have a persistent feeling that something is off, even if you cannot explain exactly why. That feeling is important. It is your mind picking up on subtle changes in behavior, tone, and emotional presence. Another important change happens in how she responds to you. The reactions that once felt genuine and enthusiastic may now feel muted. Jokes that used to make her laugh now receive only a polite response. Moments that once felt special now feel ordinary. This is not about intentional hurt or rejection. It is about a gradual decrease in emotional investment. When emotional engagement decreases, the brain naturally reduces its level of response. Excitement fades, curiosity fades, and the desire to connect weakens. This can create a sense of emotional emptiness in the relationship. You are still interacting, but the connection no longer feels alive. You may also notice a decline in curiosity about your life. When someone is emotionally invested, they want to understand you deeply. They ask questions, they listen, they care about your experiences and your inner world. But when that investment begins to fade, that curiosity often disappears as well. Conversations become more surface level, focused on practical topics rather than emotional connection. This change can feel particularly painful because it removes a key element of intimacy. Feeling seen and understood is one of the most important parts of a relationship. When that begins to disappear, it creates a sense of distance that is hard to ignore. It is important to understand that these changes do not happen overnight. They develop gradually, often without clear awareness from either person. Stress, routine, and life challenges can sometimes contribute to temporary distance, which is normal. But what matters is the pattern. Occasional emotional distance is part of any relationship. Consistent emotional withdrawal is something different. When emotional connection weakens, many people instinctively try to fix it by increasing effort. They communicate more, try harder to connect, or seek reassurance. While this response is understandable, it does not always address the root issue. Emotional connection cannot be forced. It grows naturally when both people are engaged and invested. From a health and emotional well-being perspective, It is important to approach this situation with awareness rather than panic. Instead of immediately trying to fix everything, take a moment to observe what is happening. Pay attention to patterns, not isolated incidents. Notice how communication feels over time. Notice whether emotional closeness is returning or continuing to fade. At the same time, it is important to care for your own emotional state. Experiencing distance in a relationship can create anxiety, self-doubt, and confusion. You may start questioning yourself or wondering if you did something wrong. While self-reflection can be helpful, it is equally important not to place all the responsibility on yourself. Healthy relationships are built on mutual emotional effort. When one person begins to withdraw consistently, it is not something the other person can fully control or fix alone. Recognizing this can help you stay grounded and protect your emotional well-being. If you begin to notice these early signs of emotional distance, the most helpful approach is calm, honest awareness, not confrontation, not pressure, but understanding. Creating a safe space for open communication can sometimes help reveal what is happening beneath the surface. At the same time, it is important to remain realistic about what you observe. Emotional disconnection is often the first quiet signal that something deeper is changing. It is not always the end, but it is always something that deserves attention. Recognizing it early gives you the opportunity to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. This is where awareness becomes your strength. By understanding these subtle shifts, you are no longer guessing or ignoring what you feel. You are seeing the situation clearly, which allows you to make healthier, more informed decisions about your relationship and your own emotional future. As emotional distance quietly grows, another shift begins to appear, and this one is often easier to notice if you pay attention to patterns rather than isolated moments. It shows up in effort, or more accurately, the gradual lack of it. In the early stages of a relationship, effort feels natural. Time is made, not negotiated. Even during busy days, there is a willingness to connect, to check in, to maintain that sense of closeness. But when feelings begin to change, effort no longer flows in the same way. It becomes inconsistent. You may notice that responses take longer, plans are postponed more often, and time together feels less intentional. At first, it is easy to explain this away. Life can be demanding, responsibilities can increase, and everyone goes through periods of stress. That is completely normal. What matters, however, is consistency. When someone is emotionally invested, they find ways to stay connected even during difficult times. When that investment starts to fade, connection begins to feel like an obligation rather than a desire. This is where excuses slowly replace intention. Not always in a dramatic or obvious way, but in small, repeated patterns that gradually reshape the relationship. From a psychological and emotional health perspective, effort is closely tied to internal motivation. When the brain associates a relationship with positive emotional reward, it naturally prioritizes it. Communication feels good, presence feels comforting, and connection feels meaningful. But when that emotional reward weakens, the brain begins to shift its focus elsewhere. Other activities, other people, or even solitude may start to feel more appealing. This is not necessarily a conscious rejection. It is often a reflection of changing emotional states. However, the impact on the relationship is very real. You may start to feel like you are no longer a priority. The balance begins to shift, and without realizing it, you may find yourself putting in more effort to compensate for what is missing. This response is very human. When we sense distance, we often try to close it. You might send more messages, try to plan more time together, or look for ways to bring back the connection that once felt so natural. But here is where it becomes important to pause and reflect. Increasing effort on one side does not always restore balance. In some cases, it can create pressure, which may lead the other person to withdraw even further. This creates a dynamic that can feel exhausting. One person moves closer, the other steps back. Over time, this imbalance can affect your emotional well-being. It may lead to feelings of rejection, confusion, or even frustration. That is why awareness is so important during this stage. Another noticeable change often appears in how valued you feel within the relationship. In a healthy, emotionally connected bond, there is a clear sense of being chosen. You feel appreciated, respected, and important in each other's lives. This does not mean constant attention, but it does mean consistent care. When emotional investment decreases, that sense of being chosen can begin to fade. You may feel like you are competing for attention, not just with responsibilities, but sometimes with things that previously did not come between you. It might be social plans, digital distractions, or simply a lack of presence even when you are together. This shift can be difficult to process because it challenges your sense of stability within the relationship. You may begin to question what has changed and why. It is important during this time to stay grounded in observable patterns rather than assumptions. Look at actions over time. Notice whether effort is being shared or whether it is becoming one-sided. There is also a physical dimension to this shift, and it often mirrors the emotional changes happening beneath the surface. Physical closeness in a healthy relationship is not just about routine affection. It is an expression of emotional connection. Small gestures like holding hands, sitting close, or sharing a spontaneous moment of warmth all come naturally when there is a strong emotional bond. As that bond weakens, physical affection may begin to change as well. It might start subtly. Hugs feel shorter, less engaged. There is less initiation of contact. Moments that once felt warm and connected may now feel distant or routine. Over time, you may notice a pattern of avoidance where opportunities for closeness are quietly reduced. It is important to approach this observation with care and understanding. Physical changes can be influenced by many factors, including stress, health, and emotional fatigue. However, when combined with emotional distance and reduced effort, it can signal a broader pattern of disconnection. From a well-being perspective, it is essential not to internalize these changes as a personal failure. Relationships are dynamic and emotional states can shift for many reasons. While self-awareness is valuable, self-blame is not helpful. Instead, focus on maintaining your own emotional balance. One helpful approach is to create space for honest, calm communication, not from a place of accusation, but from a place of curiosity and care. Expressing how you feel using clear, non-confrontational language can sometimes open the door to deeper understanding. At the same time, it is important to listen carefully to what is said and also to what is not said. If effort continues to decline and connection continues to weaken, it becomes important to consider your own needs. Emotional health involves recognizing when a relationship is no longer meeting those needs in a balanced way. This does not mean making immediate decisions, but it does mean being honest with yourself about what you are experiencing. During this phase, maintaining your own routines, social connections, and sense of identity becomes especially important. When a relationship feels uncertain, it is easy to become overly focused on it. But your well-being depends on a broader foundation that includes personal stability, support systems, and self-care. The key idea to remember is that effort reflects emotional investment. When that investment changes, effort changes with it. Recognizing this pattern allows you to respond with awareness rather than reaction. It helps you protect your emotional health while gaining a clearer understanding of where the relationship truly stands. This stage can feel uncomfortable, but it is also a moment of clarity. By observing patterns of effort, priority, and connection, you begin to see the relationship more realistically. And that awareness gives you the ability to make thoughtful, balanced decisions moving forward. As the emotional and physical distance continues to grow, another shift begins to surface, and this one often feels more noticeable because it directly affects daily interactions. The tone of communication changes. Small things that once felt easy and natural may now lead to tension. You might sense more irritation, less patience, and a subtle increase in criticism. At first, it can be confusing. You may find yourself wondering why behaviors that were once accepted or even appreciated now seem to cause frustration. It is important to understand that this shift is rarely about a single action or habit. Instead, it reflects a deeper emotional change. When someone feels connected and emotionally invested, they tend to respond with warmth and understanding. When that connection fades, tolerance often decreases as well. From a psychological standpoint, emotional disconnection can reduce empathy in the moment. The brain becomes less focused on maintaining harmony and more sensitive to discomfort. As a result, reactions may become sharper and patience may become limited. This does not necessarily mean there is intentional harm, but it does indicate a change in how the relationship is being experienced internally. You may also notice a form of emotional detachment that feels different from simple distance. It is not just about fewer conversations or less time together. It is about a reduced emotional response. When you share something important, the reaction may feel muted or absent. When challenges arise, there may be less interest in resolving them together. This kind of indifference can feel particularly heavy because it removes the sense of shared emotional space. It is important to approach this stage with clarity. Irritation and detachment are often symptoms, not the root cause. Trying to fix every small conflict or adjusting your behavior to avoid triggering negative reactions may not address the deeper issue. While respectful communication is always valuable, it cannot rebuild emotional connection on its own if the internal feelings have already shifted. From an emotional health perspective, this is a moment to check in with yourself. Notice how these interactions are affecting your well-being. Are you feeling anxious, uncertain, or emotionally drained? Are you beginning to question your own value or worth within the relationship? These are important signals that deserve attention and care. Another significant change often appears in how the future is viewed. In a connected relationship, there is usually a natural sense of shared direction. Plans, whether big or small, tend to include both people. There is a feeling of moving forward together. When emotional investment fades, that shared vision can begin to disappear. You may notice that future conversations become vague or avoided. Plans that once felt certain are no longer discussed with the same clarity. Language may shift in subtle ways, moving from shared ideas to more individual thinking. This is not always expressed directly, but it can be felt through hesitation or lack of enthusiasm when the future is mentioned. From a psychological perspective, this reflects a shift in internal commitment. When someone is unsure or emotionally disengaging, their mind naturally avoids long-term planning within that relationship. This is not always a conscious decision, but it becomes visible through patterns over time. You might also observe a growing sense of independence that feels different from healthy personal growth. It may seem as though decisions are being made without considering the relationship, or that personal plans are taking shape separately rather than together. While independence is important in any relationship, a sudden or consistent shift toward separation can indicate emotional distancing. One of the most challenging aspects of this stage is that the relationship may still appear intact on the surface. There may not be a clear ending yet. Conversations may still happen, time may still be spent together, and routines may continue. But internally, something has changed. The emotional presence that once defined the connection is no longer the same. This can create a sense of confusion, especially if the final conversation about the relationship has not yet happened. It may feel sudden when it eventually does, but in reality, the process has been unfolding gradually over time. Recognizing this can help you make sense of your experience and reduce the feeling of shock. From a well-being and self-care perspective, this is a crucial moment to focus on clarity and self-respect. It is not about assigning blame or forcing outcomes. It is about understanding what you are experiencing and responding in a way that protects your emotional health. If multiple patterns are present together, emotional distance, reduced effort, changes in affection, increased irritation, and a lack of shared future vision, it is important to acknowledge what they collectively indicate. While no single sign defines the entire relationship, consistent patterns provide meaningful insight. At this point, gentle but honest communication can still be valuable. Expressing your observations and feelings calmly can create an opportunity for understanding. At the same time, it is important to be open to what is revealed, even if it is not what you hope to hear. Clarity, even when difficult, is healthier than ongoing uncertainty. Equally important is your relationship with yourself. Maintaining routines that support your mental and emotional health, staying connected with supportive people, and engaging in activities that bring stability can help you navigate this period with strength. Emotional balance does not come from controlling the situation, but from staying grounded within yourself. It is also helpful to remind yourself that relationships involve two people and both contribute to the emotional environment. You can offer effort, care, and understanding, but you cannot control another person's feelings. Accepting this can reduce the pressure to fix everything on your own. In the end, awareness is your most valuable tool. By recognizing these patterns clearly, you move out of confusion and into understanding. This allows you to make decisions that align with your well-being, your values, and your future. Even though this process can feel difficult, it also creates space for growth. It encourages deeper self-awareness, stronger emotional boundaries, and a clearer understanding of what you truly need in a relationship. And that understanding becomes the foundation for healthier, more fulfilling connections moving forward.